Good evening. Call to order the planning board for the town of Raymond for Wednesday, February 12th, 2014. The board does have a quorum, so we'll start off with roll call.
Bill Priest.
Greg Foster.
Robert O'Neill.
Bruce Sanford.
Steve Lanay. Benjamin Crowder.
And also this evening with us is Jim Seymour, our town planner, and Chris Hansen, our code enforcement, and Mary Costigan from legal will be joining us a little later. I think in the evening was our plan, right? Okay. I forgot my gouge sheet, so I'm doing this from memory. The board works from a public agenda. This evening, we will be looking at two sets of minutes from January 15th and January 29th meetings. We have a pre-application meeting pre-application conference to discuss the potential projects for a future site plan with the Boy Scouts of America. And then we have a tabled application for the town of Fry Island, the Cape Road and Quarry Cove Road. After that, we have some planning board business for the bylaws and planner communications. That's it.
Public hearing? No.
No public hearing.
Public meeting. You're allowed. Heard it enough.
Say it again?
It's a public meeting and they're allowed to have access to all documents.
Oh, yes, thank you. It is. This is a public meeting and you are allowed to have access to all documentation that is put forward this evening. Those that are addressing the board tonight will be those that are representing the applications, and you are asked to state your name from the podium, and then the presentations will be from over here. I think that's pretty much it. What am I missing? Anything important?
Official record.
Oh, the official record. The official record tonight is going to be the video recording, and the minutes just are here to summarize. I think that's it. I probably forgot something. All right, first up is our January 15th minutes. Is there anyone with changes?
Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I was absent.
Gotcha. Abstentions, 1. That's accepted. Next is our January 29th, 2014 minutes.
I'll move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstains. Minutes are accepted. Okay, our pre-application for Boy Scouts of America, just how we normally do this. We'll let Jim kind of give us a brief introduction to the project, then we will turn it over to you for a presentation, and then we'll open it to the board for any questions that they may have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make one disclosure that I may have a potential conflict of interest. I am an employee of Sebago Technics. As you know, is contracted with the planning services here in the town of Raymond. Sebago Technics is also assisting the Boy Scouts with their stormwater management permit for the DEP. I have no involvement with that project. It's being operated out of our other office in Lewiston, as well as I'm not a principal or officer at Sebago Technics and have no financial interest with this project. So in the fairness of disclosure and process, I'll leave it up to you, the board, if you feel that I should step down or stay on.
Okay. Is there any discussion from the board members?
The stormwater is just going to be submitted to the DEP and for the DEP permit.
Correct.
I have no problem.
Problem?
I think since it's going through the DEP, they're kind of, in essence, you're working to provide documentation to the DEP.
Correct.
Not us, really.
Right. My understanding is this project will be conducted by Terrence DeWan and Associates.
Okay, I think we'll acknowledge your disclosure and see no reason for you to recuse yourself from the discussions. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and board members, this evening the Boy Scouts of America, the Pine Tree Council, is seeking, I guess, early input not approval, for improvements at their Camp Hines facilities located at 146 Plains Road. There they have a 127-acre parcel located with access off Plains Road. Their proposal that will be forthcoming, to my understanding, will consist of a 100-plus car parking lot with one-way access circulation off their current internal private access. It will also include construction of a new dining hall, conversion or change out of an existing subsurface wastewater system with a new one, relocation and upgrading of shooting ranges. Utility improvements include three-phase power upgrades, and probably the other important piece of this will be accommodations for military personnel who will be assisting in the construction of this process, of this project. I would recommend, as going forward, I would recommend that the board acquaint themselves with the shoreline zoning. This project is within the shoreline zoning and residential zone. Under the shoreline zoning, we'll be looking at principal and accessory structures, that's section B. Section G, parking areas. Section H, roads and driveways. Section J, stormwater runoff and flood protection. Section K, septic waste disposal. Section R, erosion and sedimentation control. Section S, soils, and Section T, water quality. This will be a joint application with both shoreline zoning and site plan application. My recommendation is that you allow the applicant to disclose a little more detail, and at this time, you do not have to make any decisions. Essentially here to learn and listen, so take it in.
Thank you. All yours. Yes, yes.
Good evening. My name is Keith Smith. I'm a landscape architect with Terrence Dewan and Associates, Yarmouth, and I'm representing tonight Pine Tree Council, Boy Scouts of America for Camp Hines. With me tonight, if there's further questions, I have the Executive Director, Eric Tarbox, with the Pine Tree Council, Boy Scouts of America, Walt Simpson, who's the Vice President, Volunteer Vice President of Properties, and Scott Martin, who's the residential full-time ranger at Camp Hines. So first off, I'll give you an overview. This is Camp Hines. We have the Plains Road. You have Route 85 over here. This is all of the proper holdings of Camp Hines within this particular area. The parcels we'll be talking about tonight is the 3.6 acres here. And you can see this darkened in zone within the middle of the property. That's the proper area for which I'll be showing where most of the improvements will be being made. So as you can see, it's just a small portion of the overall site plan. And if I come to the property, as we get closer, this is the Plains Road. You have the Tenney River, Panther Pond is down below. There's a CMP power line that runs through the property. And I'm sure you've been along there. Here's the main entrance and the large Camp Hines sign that sits back at the tree line. So the intention of this project is to help service the camp, make overall improvements. They need some upgrades. The dining hall doesn't currently hold enough capacity for the campers. The access road is being proposed to be relocated for safety and convenience for the new property. We're proposing a three-phase power that would be coming off the Plains Road. And so I'll just get into the
You might hold the microphone up to your mouth, because I think he needs you to record that.
Okay, I'll put that there. So I'll take the overall thing in components. The first thing would be the new access drive. The existing drive comes into camp, comes along down. This green area here is the current parking area, where drop-offs happen on Sundays, primarily when they have camp turnover. And the main drive goes down and continues down the hill into Lower Camp. We are proposing a new access road. It's about 1,600 feet, would break off at this point, skirt around the outside of the property to access the location of the new dining hall. The intention here is to keep service vehicles and main traffic out of the center of camp. There's much more activity that happens within the middle here, and knowing that we do need a new dining hall, the Cisco trucks come through, the service vehicles, trash, all these vehicles come through there, and it's just good design to try to keep them on the outskirts of the camp as much as possible. So that would be the new drive. At this point, the old drive would be coming in at a T, and it would be gated off and discontinued for just pedestrian use. It will be gated to be able to access it and service it, get vehicles down there as necessary. But all of the traffic will go on the outside. And Jim had mentioned a one-way. It's not going to end up being a one-way loop. It'll be a two-way road that goes all the way in, and then two-way road out to keep all of the traffic on the exterior. As you come in off the new road, I'm relocating the new parking area up in this corner. There's an existing clearing right there, which made it convenient to try to relocate there. Also, the objective here is to make it a more organized, easier for drop-offs and pickups, especially on that Sunday. That's one of the big things is making it so the organization of this all works better. Currently, the vehicles come all the way into camp and they're parking on the road with trailers, and it's a little confusing. With the new layout plan, the intention is this parking area holds 109 cars, and on the exterior you can see an extra bay that I've set up for trailer stacking. The way things happen is the vehicles come in, they park, the kids take their stuff and they go over to the trailer, they load it on the trailer, and only the trailer comes into camp. This way we can keep vehicles out of the camp entirely. So they only come into this point, and majority of them would turn out and exit. The stormwater is going to be handled with bioretention in this particular area, and that will be going through the DEP. So if we go further down the road, the next stop is a multi-purpose field. This area is currently a rifle shooting area, and then there's a clearing on this side, which is also the sporting clay, the shotgun range. With the intention, I'll get to that later, is to move that, relocate that to a different location. And because there's already a partial clearing there, the intention for that is a multi-purpose recreation field. There's a need for more recreation space, gatherings. It'll be used for sporting events, archery, any number of things. And as we go further down the drive, we get down to the dining hall. This is showing about a 9,600 square feet footprint. It's currently shown as a two-story structure where there will be walkout on the bottom side. So the service area will be at the north side, and then the southeast and west is going to be the more camper zone. It's been designed so that service vehicles would be able to come in and back up into a service area, be able to drive out the primary road so that they're not going into the main camp area. I've also located, dumpsters and recycling in there. In this zone also, I have 5 employee parking areas, and then I have another additional parking area which is going to have 3 accessible spaces and then 2 additional spaces for any ADA needs. And then if we come back over to the shooting range, this is the area where it's being relocated for the shooting ranges. There is currently an existing short range. So in the end, there's going to be 4 100-yard ranges, or 100 feet ranges, and 1 100-meter range, so that they can keep up with the Boy Scout standards and their marksman requirements. And with this, so like I said, there's one existing, and currently there's another clearing, which is the current archery range. So we'll be keeping the one short bay and adding 3 additional short bays, the 100-foot ranges. And then on the back side will be the long range, and these are separated by berms. It's being designed according to the NRA standards, which has requirements for 8 to 10 foot side berms, and then the shooting, the berm behind the target is about a 20-foot berm, and it will all be vegetated. It's designed at a 2-to-1 slope. The side berms, the steepest berm along the back, so that you don't get any trajectory going off of that. It's steeper. It's at a 1-to-1, and it's a ballistic sand that's on there, which will collect the shots and then can be replaced on occasion to keep that process going out. So that's the intention there. The small clearing here is taking the place of about the equivalent size shotgun range that existed on the other side. The intention with locating the ranges here is we have a large landform on the back side of this, and it's all forested, and that we keep it compact in one small zone. So between those two, it's a safer location. It's going to be more organized. It's going to be easier to manage from the Boy Scouts and the camp perspective, and we're hoping that will also reduce any noise that it produces because it will have a better buffer. The existing parking for Camp Hines is going to become a waste system for the new dining hall. So that area will be revegetated and become a parade ground. On the other side of the road, what's going to happen is, you may be familiar with the IRT program, which is, what is that? It's the Innovative Readiness Training Program, where the National Guard is going to be doing a lot of this work. So with the National Guard coming in, we need to set up some resources for them to be able to do their work. So in a smaller, on this portion of the property, we have 3 shower trailers that are going to be set up. It's a temporary basis, so they're going to be put on stone pads. And associated with that is going to be 3 waste fields located over the existing ball field area. And for housing, they'll be doing tenting beyond what they can't occupy in the existing structure. They'll be tenting in the field for short terms. So, trying to think if there's anything else. That's kind of an overview of what we have proposed here. Jim had mentioned that we have to meet the shoreline zoning. I'm prepared to do that. We are preparing the shoreline zone application as well as a site plan application, and we're hoping to submit that at the end of the week. So any feedback you have toward reaching that point is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Jim?
Another piece of information that I believe that was handed out to you this evening was a memorandum from the Raymond Fire Inspector as well, who happens to be with us. If you have any questions for him, I believe this has also been forwarded on to the applicant for their information and design incorporation.
Did you get a copy?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I can talk to that if you'd like.
Okay. You?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
okay.
there were questions for fire treatment at the new dining hall in particular. The dining hall is going to be served with from the existing well, which is down the hill. And we know the dining hall hasn't been entirely designed yet, but we know there will probably be a need for storage. So we're intending to put a storage facility there to feed the fire suppression system.
She'll probably have a pump and a tank.
Correct. Beyond that, I know there was discussion of potential other dry wells. I know the inspector was referencing a dry well that just falls off the site up here that at one point was taken out by a storm, so water flows through it, and that's a possibility of repairing that at some point. I think we'd have to coordinate efforts on how we can properly do that, permitting wise, et cetera. But we understand that's an interest of the town, and we're willing to look at that.
Also, there was some concern about the emergency vehicle access on the smaller loop. Is that true? Did I read that right?
Not that there was a,
Yeah, please.
David Maines, Raymond Fire Inspector. The information that I got was, or the plan that I reviewed was a preliminary plan to the one that he's presenting now. So my comment was only that as they continue through the planning process, we just need to keep access for emergency vehicles,
Oh, okay.
you know, in mind. Make sure that, you know, the loop that they've got designed appears to be, you know, exactly what we would be asking for, so that we can get a fire truck or an ambulance down there and turn around and back out as needed. One comment, while we're talking about emergency access, you mentioned the existing access road is going to be gated at both ends.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's to allow more free flow of pedestrian.
Correct.
Traffic in the middle. So, given the arrangement, we would request that, you know, that continue to be maintained.
Yep.
Because we would want access to that, in the case of an emergency, to be able to get an ambulance or something into one of the campers that's in there.
Would you require a Knox box or something like that?
Yes, the fire protection ordinance requires a key box on any building that has a monitored fire alarm or sprinkler. The new dining hall will require both. What we, in this case, it's a, you know, we would also want, you know, in that box, a copy of, you know, gate keys, so that we're not, when we respond to emergencies, if we've got access to the gate keys, we try to use them. We obviously have other means to get through the gate, and we try not to do that if we don't have to. So I think the location of the Knox box in this proposed development would be a subject that we could, you know, discuss. You know, located on the dining hall may not be the most advantageous location for this project, because you know, I can envision us needing to respond to the site and needing to be somewhere other than the dining hall, and being able to have the keys as we access the site, as opposed to having to go all the way into the site and then come back to the emergency scene.
Understood.
I have a question on the firing range. We,
Yep.
and I don't really have any knowledge of this at all, but do we need to be concerned with the noise pollution and in its use, and how often it's going to be used with the surrounding community, you know, people that live there, you know, but the homes on that? Are we on Payne Road? Am I right there?
It's on Plains Road.
Plains Road?
Yeah. It's a historic use on the site.
Mhm.
I mean, the Scouts have been using it for a long time. I know programmatically they're hoping to reduce the current program, so that if anything, we can reduce the amount of noise that's going to be coming out of this, and that in turn with the location of it, which is hopefully better buffered, our intention that the noise levels will be lower than previously.
Okay.
Great, really good question.
Yep.
The current firing range, which direction do they shoot?
Oh, and that's an improvement as well. This one's going
Okay.
northeast, and the shotgun is going across the Tenny.
Okay,
Over
because
the
there
other
was
side.
at one point a selectmen's meeting where there were a number of complaints. So
Yeah.
now you're gonna be shooting what direction?
We're going to be shooting, right here is the highest point of the site. The short ranges are going to be shooting this
Okay.
direction. And, you know, there's a little bit of an extension of this that bumps out, and the long range will be shooting in this direction, which runs parallel with Panther Pond. And the shotgun range is going in this direction. I did look at, you know, at the NRA recommendations for shot fall, drop zones and all of that, and it does, within a 900-foot range, stay within the property.
Got a couple of questions.
Yep.
The existing dining hall, is it going to be demolished or just converted to a different use?
It's going to be repurposed. I believe it's. Yeah. Wrote it down.
This is Eric Tarbox.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Eric Tarbox. I'm the Executive Director of the Boy Scouts. That's a real historic treasure for us. So we'd like to stabilize the building because it's very, very old and it needs fixing. And our intent is to clean up the kitchen and maybe put some modern things in there so that it can be used as a troop canteen or trading post, or so that, potentially packs or families could come in and rent it and maybe make some light meals and so forth. But we want to preserve that building because many of our Scoutmasters have said they bring their scouts here because they remember this camp as when they went to camp. So there's a tremendous amount of historic treasure. So we want to maintain that and improve it and make sure that the building doesn't fall down.
If there are any alterations to the perimeter of the building, beyond the building for access and new walkways or grading or anything like that, that would need to be addressed as part of the site plan review process.
Yes, sir. I believe it's wheelchair accessible now, and I
All
don't,
internal to the building, so to speak, is what you're planning.
internally as well as externally?
No, I'm just saying that what you're planning now apparently is all internal renovation.
Yes, that's,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay. The next question I had is the temporary septic field for the National Guard across the Plains Road. Are those going to be removed and, revegetated, or are they going to be abandoned in place at the end of construction, or what?
Yeah, my name's Walt Stinson, and been working on the septic fields, and the plan right now is to leave them in place when they're done. They will be installed in accordance with all the Maine State Plumbing Code requirements. And once the National Guard picks up their units and leaves, we'll leave the septic system in. And in the event that the training center ever needs a new system, it will be there, that they'll be able to use that system.
Might be able to be used again in the future.
Correct.
Okay. The other question I had, I remember my Boy Scout days at camp that one troop would be doing archery, another would be doing crafts, another would be doing canoeing, another would have free time. And my concern about the shooting range, I didn't hear anything about fencing or consideration. I'm not saying this is going to be an issue, but they're your boys, I'm sure their safety is primary. I'm concerned that, some kids on free time hearing the pop and going off over the range may decide to kind of wander over and climb up the hill and try to go through the trees and see what's going on. And that could be a safety issue. So some type of isolation beyond berming between the two shooting ranges systems might be something for you to consult with your safety consultants.
Sure.
Currently, we have to be inspected by National Boy Scouts, come and does a camp inspection before actually the first week the camp is open. And one of those mandatory requirements is that we actually have line that is about waist height that has warning signs on it well around the perimeter of any existing shooting range. So this line goes over any trails or anything that says clearly on there, danger shooting range. And then as part of the welcome to camp safety briefings that all the scouts have to get, they're notified as where those safety lines are, and they're not allowed to cross those safety lines.
Yeah, I guess my reply to that would be, my Boy Scout troop was Fort Bliss in Texas and Army Post. And I can't imagine the U.S. Army allowing a shooting range used by Boy Scouts on an Army base without a fence around it. Because of that problem of somebody ignoring a sign, and just because the sign is there and the boys have been warned to stay away from it, you'd like to think that the wheels are turning and they realize the danger and they're going to obey that, but it just takes one kid who ignores it for a tragedy to happen. So please discuss that among yourselves.
Yes, sir.
Bill? Good. Yeah, looks great to me. Ben, you have a,
I think so.
you okay? Keith? Yep.
I have one question. Would the shooting ranges have hours of operation or management plan?
Yes, we've done an awful lot of listening and learning over the last several months. And there's some best practices out there. Just for example, the SIG Academy in Exeter has no shooting before noon on Sunday. And then they have posted hours and so forth. And, you know, we also had some third parties coming in to use camp. And we've realized that's not in our core mission. So we have listened hard and decided to not do that sort of thing and have all shooting at camp be scout related, other than the potential of maybe a hunter education, potentially for the public at various times throughout the year, public service type things, but not private third-party vendors. So we've made that, and that's board approved, and that's as a part of us listening to people in the community.
Thank you.
Is there, on that, while we're on this firing range, is there going to be some, does a flag fly when the range is hot, and so that, is that visible by the community, or just on the site?
It's just on the site. That's part of our risk management, is that we have a red flag that has to be up or down when the range is in use. Yes, and we also follow the NRA guidelines for range safety officers being present and so forth. I don't think I know of any camp that has a flag, you know, on its entrance on the public way. I haven't seen that before. But.
Okay. And Keith, there's just one, we're in the process of changing the parking ordinances, and I'm guessing you will be under the older ordinances, is that?
Correct.
Is that, but I would say that the board will probably be looking towards, I mean, if in fact they're approved in June, the board will be kind of looking at going in those directions, so that what I would suggest is maybe looking at the proposals, the proposed warrants, and maybe possibly if it's going to work with this design, we would kind of try to look at the design towards that, those the more standards, yeah, thanks.
Okay,
And
I
you
will,
say that.
I'll take a look at this.
Okay.
One question.
Yep.
Is this, I guess my question is this to accommodate, this overall project, to accommodate more campers, or just to accommodate the existing number of campers on a better situation? And the related question to that is your water supply enough if you're bringing in more campers?
We've done an awful lot of projections, and unfortunately, the population of the state of Maine is flat. And Boy Scouts many times mirrors a percentage of the available boys who want to be in Scouts. So when a population is growing, we typically experience growth. When a population is flat, we typically experience flat population. The only thing I could see that would be an expansion, a great expansion of number of campers, would be out-of-state troops wanting to come to Camp Hines. We have had typical out-of-state interest in coming to Maine, which we want to, you know, continue. But we've been peaking at about total 1,300 Scout campers per summer is about our peak. Now, while we would love to see a lot more boys come in, our statistical analysis just doesn't really call for a great expansion. The dining hall currently, we have to seat boys outside and inside. And unless we do something like meal A, meal B, and half the camp comes in this, and then everybody gets out, and then the other half of the camp comes in, and then the facility we have to expand it. We have to, part of our program is having all the boys in at one time, so there can be songs, the traditional camp experience, and we're not meeting that nearly right now. So to answer your question is really to have a better plan and a better experience for those campers so that they want to keep coming back. We'd love to see a lot more campers come in, but
So your water supply is adequate with
Yes,
existing
sir.
well? Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna ask for a site walk or not, we haven't gotten that far yet, but.
Next thing on the list, though. What was the next thing on the list?
What?
Yeah.
You wanna bring it
No,
up?
go ahead, you got it.
I don't know what your timeline is on moving forward, and I wanted to ask, you know, is the road in plowed right now? So if we wanted to go on a site walk, you know, next weekend, we could physically get in there and look at things. I-
The road is plowed in, and I have plenty of snowshoes.
Yeah, that's my concern, is all the snow, and then we got mud season, and I don't know how all this is gonna correlate with your design plans moving forward.
So could you give us just an idea as to when
Yeah. Give us
your
a timeline.
timeline? I know you're planning, you said the end of this week, you're planning on submitting
Correct.
direct plans?
Friday's the deadline for the
Yep.
March
Right,
final review.
okay. So do you want to get out there before the March meeting? Do you wanna wait to see the plans and go after the March meeting?
When would they like to start construction? That's,
Well, we're hoping to be able to start construction either mid-April to early May. We anticipate having National Guard troops arrive during that time frame, and they'll be ready to go to work. So we know that it's a tight schedule, and if the board, would like to have a site walk, we'd certainly be glad to join you there sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's a pretty tight schedule. We're gonna need a public hearing, we need 30 days to notice that public hearing. The board's gonna wanna see the plans before we schedule a public hearing. So you're talking, the March meeting to look at the plans. We could schedule a public hearing and site walk after that, but then we would be looking at April for the public hearing, unless our dates are wrong.
Yeah, you just,
Am I off on that?
yeah, your public notice, or your public hearing notice is 14 days.
Oh, 14 days.
14
Oh, okay. All right, so that would make, so we could then conceivably have the public hearing in April. So, I would say realistically, you're looking at May.
Sure. No, we understand the constraints of the board and your process, and, we certainly want to work within that process, but, anything that we can do to help, I'd appreciate it.
The dining hall wouldn't be ready for this summer anyway.
No, it wouldn't. I think the only thing that we're up against is that we will have troops arriving, like I said, April or May, and they'll be ready to go to work on constructing the road. And, I think early May works for us, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And,
That would make, we'd have,
That's doable.
depends on how complete the
12.
application is. If the application is substantially complete, March and April could be just maybe a rubber stamp at that point, if everything was in line. The other thing we typically want to see is some kind of correspondence or approval from the DEP as well.
Right.
And depends on how long they take in the process, so, we may be looking at April anyway.
So do we want to do the sidewalk before the next meeting? Probably makes sense.
Yeah, they're submitting this Friday, is that correct?
Correct.
We could talk to Danielle, but we can get the packets out, their submittal packet out immediately after that, so you have that information, then the following weekend, or whenever you want to do it, you can schedule your site walk, so you'd have some plan information to go along with your site walk.
it just has to occur before the next meeting.
That's occurred for the next.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
which
it'd be
you
nice
have
to
plenty of
occur.
time.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
it's
plenty of
March.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, risk turning this on without it ringing again.
So you're looking at
Is
the
that-
20, if you want to go on a Saturday, it'd be the 22nd or the March 1st. Yeah, this is the 15th, this Saturday.
22nd, first of next two Saturdays.
Good.
I'm voting for March
Is there a
1st.
29th this year?
Might get rid of some of the snow.
There you go.
Or get a
It's
lot
gonna
more.
snow whatever.
If you go now, you can walk on.
Yeah, now,
I can't do much first.
Not after
you
tomorrow.
can't do much
I could
first?
do that
Can you do
anyway,
22nd?
Not after tomorrow.
Yeah,
Can everybody do the 22nd?
Yep.
22nd, would that work for you?
Depends on what time.
We usually have to do them in the morning, so
That's better for me.
that for you, what time, 9? Sound okay?
I don't know if I'll be able to walk out there.
Oh, yeah, you're not gonna.
Oh, yeah.
Don't,
9 all right?
Yep.
9 okay with you? Okay, so
Bring
9
your shoulder.
o'clock on the 22nd.
We'll put them on the toboggan, drag
And
them.
we'll meet, is there a good place to meet there?
I'd say right in the training center.
Right in the train center?
Right in the Rotary Nestor White Farmhouse.
just drive in?
That's right at Camp Hines across the street right there.
Right across.
Oh, on that side.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. We'll be there.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's a good thing. Oh, yeah.
All right, next thing on the agenda is our tabled application to the town of Flat Island for their apartment garage facility. First thing we would need would be a motion to remove the project from the table.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Passes. I guess you unanimously. All right, Jim, you want to take us through the changes since our last time?
I'm gonna let Mr. Greg get his plan up a little bit so he can follow
Okay.
along with that.
Sorry, Mark, if you use it. Faster than that. What do you
I
think
have no
about?
idea how to run this thing. It looks like a needle.
It's locked, probably. It doesn't have.
Yeah, we always. Probably changed direction. Yeah, I never looked at that. Something like that, maybe?
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Chair, this was back, to the board's meeting 10/23. At that time, there was a hearing held. The board took into account, at that time, there were 3 items still remaining on the shoreline zone provisions, which the applicant had to address. One of those having to deal with adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat was approved by the board 5-0. The outstanding items for shoreline zoning review is the first standard, which is will maintain safe and healthful conditions, and 9 is in conformance with the provisions of section 15 of the land use standards. Typically, we hold off on those until we go through all the site plan standards, which is the other side of this application, which we still have to go through once we complete shoreline zoning. So my recommendation is, Mr. Chair, that we look at the changes which were to address some of the board's concerns with safe and healthful conditions and primarily around traffic patterns. The drawings as submitted, the revisions that I discovered or disclosed were there's now an area on both sides of what I call the queuing lane from the parking lot to Cape Road, which have been widened on both sides. Will extend 240 feet back northerly, which is going up to the curve on Cape Road, and then 280 feet is cleared to the side going towards Quarry Cove Road. That is to provide more sight distance as you approach from both directions. In addition, a gate will be added to the Quarry Cove entrance and the exit from the parking lot going back out onto Cape Road, again, on that side closest to the curve. Jersey barriers or boulders or some large item will be placed seasonally near the intersection on the, again, queuing lane from the parking lot, such that people can't get in and out of the parking lot. The other pieces that were added were removable bollards with chains would be used along the crosswalk section and drop-off area at the top of the landing road. You've received information in your packet from William Eaton, P.E., on the Fry Island parking survey results and his opinion in the parking number determinations. There's also a letter from Michael Mullen in regards to the vernal pool non-significant determination. And you have also in your packet the final letter from the Maine DEP for approval of the stormwater management permit. Based on the information that you have, I would recommend at this time that you allow the applicant's engineer to further review any of that material and to address maybe other board concerns. Just briefly, I remember from that October 23rd meeting, there was a lot of disclosure from the board and concern about that queuing lane from the parking lot down to Cape Road where it crosses, and would be a continuation of the queue coming up Landing Road. The board had asked that the applicant look at either eliminating that or narrowing that or doing something different such that we could eliminate that four-point intersection of traffic and pedestrians. They have come back and feel that the improvements they have made meets the standard, and I'll let them further disclose their design choices.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Thank you. Again, I'm Mark Gray from GM Civil and Structural Engineering, representing the town of Fry Island. And with me tonight are Bill Eaton, who's our traffic engineer, who I'm going to turn the microphone over to so he can explain the parking study that was requested. Also, Rick Jones from Jones Associates, in case you have any questions for him. And Natalie Burns from Jensen, Baird, Gardner, and Henry is attending tonight as well. I think Jim did a good job of explaining the changes that have been made. They aren't major, and most of them have been suggestions that have been made previously. We just kind of caught the plans up to date. And with that, if you would, you can. We did do a survey of the residents and came up with some results, and I'll let Bill speak to that.
Mark. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Eaton of Eaton Traffic Engineering, and as requested at the October meeting, we had a survey conducted of the residents, and of this, there are currently approximately 525 residents camp lots on the island. Of that, we received responses from 144, which is 27, a little over 27% return, which is pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. What we found as a result of that survey, and I'll try to go through this quickly because I imagine you've all had a chance to read the memo and go through it, so I won't bore you by repeating too much, is that 40% of the people on the island stay there for the entire summer. So they're there. Another 25% stay there for several weeks, and then probably every weekend. And for the rest of the people, it's every single weekend or every other weekend or occasionally when they can get up there, whatever. So it's a pretty stable population. Now that also assumes extrapolating the data out from the 144 to the entire 525, that's a reasonable extrapolation. Okay, there is some uncertainty there, and I want to make that very clear. What we also found out was that a little over 20% which said that they would use parking lots if they were provided. And primarily when you start and think about it and looking at the spreadsheets that we put together and using some common sense as well, the most likely people to use the parking lot are the residents that are there for the entire summer because they can't. People that come up for the weekend, they're going to bring all of their supplies with them in their car, take the car over, and they're probably going to spend the entire weekend on the island and then leave on the Sunday or Monday or whatever. If you're there all summer, you need periodically to get off the island to do shopping, personal errands, recreation, whatever. And in that case, it may make a lot of sense to those people that are permanent residents to have an island car, which could be, a lot of people on Peaks Island usually have a beater, and then they have the nice car, on the shore, or a golf cart, something to get around, and then park a car. And that way, they can get a reduced fare as being pedestrian going across the ferry. And they also don't have to wait. They don't have to wait in line to get on. Usually, the ferries can accommodate pedestrians. So when all was said and done, looking at the entire survey, what people said they would do, keeping in mind of the number of people back in the 1970s that said that they would take mass transit if gas went up to $1 a gallon, and we know that that all didn't happen. People sometimes say things that they don't really mean. We figure that perhaps the demand might be about 10% of the residents would use a mainland parking lot, which would be 550 to 55 parking spaces. And primarily, you'd like to think that that would occur on weekends, but it probably would be fairly constant because most of the users would probably be the permanent long-term residents that are staying there for the entire summer. We originally measured parking demand that would probably peak at about 25, 26 spaces on a peak weekend along the side of the road. And as a result of that, I had recommended that to be conservative, we probably should try and provide 30 to 35 spaces. And that's based on existing demand. That's not based on a better parking facility, which this would be, even though it would be slightly further away, involve a little bit longer walk. It would still be a different situation. What we have proposed is 43 parking spaces, sort of between the theoretical that we might get and what seems to be out there for existing demand. And, in our opinion, we think that that's the best way to go, and we understand that, we're still, to a certain extent, shooting in the dark. Okay, we don't know exactly. We've got some good numbers. We feel good about it, but there's no guarantees involved. And we would concur with Jim Seymour's suggestions that we put a monitoring plan into place, and we're more than willing to sit down with the town, work with them to work out something to see how well that demand develops. If it turns out to be a positive expenditure, I'm pretty sure that that parking lot, obviously we'd have to come back to you, could be expanded to accommodate more cars. Or if it's already too many, then that's money that the town of Fry Island put into the ground that isn't being used. So that in essence summarizes the results of that parking study, and I'll stop now and respond to any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Questions from the board on that? Jimmy, you got your answer?
Just on just on the parking study?
Just on the parking study.
We're not gonna get into discussions of suitability, number of spaces.
Yeah, we'll do
anything
that in a
right
second.
now.
Yeah, I just want to know if there's any questions.
No.
Yeah, we will do that. Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks.
Rob, is there anything else that you want to add on the changes?
Unless you have questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Okay. When did it start? All right, now,
I don't really have questions, more comments. After the last meeting, I went out and did a little research and have a pretty nice literature review on intersection safety. And actually, the statistics for intersection safety is 45% to 46% of all crashes occur at intersections. And if you look at rural, where's this? Looking at rural four-leg stops, stop-controlled intersections, we have twice as many accidents as a rural three-leg stop-controlled intersection. So already, we're going from a three-leg intersection to a four-leg intersection, and we're doubling the potential for accidents, with an average of 1.1 accidents per intersection year. And this is in rural, this is not urban. The other aspect, the thing I found was that even when you put in a prepare to stop when flashing sign, when it's on a curved approach, there is no significant impact on reducing accident rates. So our job is in fact to determine, is this project as safe as the current situation? Statistically, from data from this, from intersection safety, this is clearly twice as dangerous as what we currently have. We've gone 30 years with no accident, whereas these statistics are predicting 1.1 accidents per year. So you don't want us to redesign your project. You're asking us to make a determination on this design. I personally say this is a dangerous situation. The other thing I brought up at the meeting, which I guess I'd missed for my brief time off the board, the original design had a one-car queuing lane, pinched down to one car. Now it's two. I think there's a significant danger if you've got an SUV and a small car, let's say a Hummer and a Prius sitting there ready to in the queuing lane. There's sightline issues. My business is in an area where there are two lanes coming up and a single lane coming in, and every accident that occurs at that intersection has to do with the fact that there's a visibility problem. So that, in essence, even makes it more dangerous, in my opinion.
I agree with Steve. Another comment I've got regarding the suitability of the number of parking areas, one of the standards of parking criteria in our statutes is that the number of spaces must be suitable for the intended use. And by the engineers and the applicants' statements, not only tonight, but in multiple meetings we've had before, we just don't know, and you just don't know what the usage of this parking lot is going to be. By my reading of the ordinance statutes then, how can we approve something that has a suitable number of parking spaces for its intended use when the applicant and his engineers and the owners stand right up here and say that we really have no idea? So that makes it awfully tough for us to say that's the right number, it's 3 times too many, it's half as much as you should have. We don't know either. There's another issue I wanted to go back and revisit. It's whether it is actually even an allowable use. Parking facilities, as defined in the shoreland zoning, are an allowable use. We go back to the word municipal, which we've discussed before, and I've done some reading through of the comprehensive plan and the use of the word municipal. I've gone through and done some reading in the main planning guide about the usage of the word municipal. And in every single usage in those documents, first of all, in the comprehensive plan, the term municipal, town, local, public is strewn throughout the comprehensive plan and used almost interchangeably at the whim of the writer. There doesn't seem to be any strict non-correlation between those terms. In looking at not only the comprehensive plan use only of the word municipal, but in the main planning board guide, every time the word municipal is used, it's used within the context of a municipality within its own borders. And every time the word municipal is used in the context of an abutter, someone else other than that municipality, it's used in tandem with the word regional, cross-border, or joint, such as if there is a subdivision that straddles 2 towns, any decisions by the planning board must be of joint meetings of the planning boards of both of those towns. And that's a very good example of the word joint. When you go into the comprehensive plan, they talk about regional control of safe boating on lakes that cross municipal boundaries. They talk about regional trash control. So this strict correlation between municipal, local, public, Raymond as being a standalone entity within its own borders, and every time the word municipal is used to indicate a joint, a cross-border, a regional application, it specifically says so, leads me to believe strongly that the word municipal in the shoreland zoning was originally intended, which we have to take into consideration, as Raymond, within our own borders of, by, and for the town of Raymond. It's not, if it doesn't say joint municipal, cross-border municipal, regional municipal, just municipal, according to the way that word is used throughout the documents I've looked at, it's of, by, and for the town of Raymond within our own borders. And I do not think personally that a parking lot owned and operated by the town of Fry Island as a municipal usage is an allowable usage in the shoreland zone. I know our town attorney does not agree with that. In the main planning guide, it says that officials of the town who give us advice, their opinions must be given some deference, but that doesn't mean that they're always right, and it doesn't mean that we cannot disagree with their findings. And I do not think that the word municipal, as applied in the shoreland zoning, allows the town of Fry Island to own and operate a parking lot in the shoreland zone.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'll just reiterate, town's attorney and the code enforcement officer have both stated that parking is an allowed use in the shoreland zoning. However you feel about the term municipality, it's just that. It's just your opinion, and please do not use that in your judgment in reviewing and making a decision on this application. Your job is to review the standards for parking. Secondly, with your comment about joint application, that's in context when the land is abutting another town. This is a totally unique case, I understand that. In a case where you have properties that may overlap from one town to another, that is when you typically have a joint application, such as if you had, for instance, the Portland International Jetport. It's voted by both South Portland and Portland. Typically, any improvements made at the jetport have to go through both boards for review. And again, parking is an allowed use within the shoreland zone, and we must follow those standards.
Well, I'll restate my, just very succinctly, this municipal does not relate to the town of Fry Island in the shoreland zone. And going back to the parking area per se, I do not think they can adequately prove or disprove whether what they're planning is a correct number of parking spaces for the intended use, because the applicant has admitted multiple times he just doesn't know.
Bill, Greg?
I'm good. Just ask me.
So Marty, I think to kind of sum up the problem with the parking, we've been through this a number of times back and forth. And understanding this, you know, there's 10, whatever, 12, 15% slop in the numbers, in the estimates. That's we're not really knowing. Could go either way. So we're coming up with 50 or 55 parking spaces that are required to be used by the residents. And initially, when we asked for numbers, you gave us numbers that were broken down into 3 groups. One of those groups was 15 to 20 spaces that were going to be used by contractors. So if we add those in, and I think that number's correct, and it's somewhere in that area, but if we add those numbers in, you know, then we're talking about, you know, the 60 to 70, easy 70 spaces that you are basically saying is going to be required for this parking. And the project is 43 to 44 spaces. One of the things that I think the board has continually wrestled with is that you have presented the project as on a way of improving the safety at the terminal by reducing the cars that queue up along Cape Road. But if we are to assume that these numbers of parking spaces that are required, then we're going to wind up in the exact same situation that we were now, in that the parking lot will be filled. There will be excess cars that want to park, that are going to park somewhere along that area, and those, you know, and then we're still going to the only thing that we will have alleviated maybe is that the queue will be off the road. And then we get into the fact that, well, we've changed one set scenario where it has not been safe, where it has been perfectly safe, for another scenario where we have a whole bunch of parking, and yet we have another scenario where is less safe. So I don't really feel that for us, at least for me, that our obligation to find if the parking lot was adequately sized is not there. Now, whether or not the land and the design can even be expanded to incorporate 70 or 75 parking spaces, I'm not sure that's a possibility, that's even possible with the phosphorus and runoff and, the amount of land that can be developed. So that's where I kind of stand on the parking. I don't really think that you've met that obligation to design that lot towards the needs, towards the documented needs. And I think it's under-designed.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Wanted to-
Sorry. I think we have, again, as I've stated, a unique case here where currently, they're an existing use, and we have concerns about parking on the road. Under our parking standards, there's no unit or measurement that we can put on to say the town requires X amount of spaces, other than, whatever information the applicant provides us. And I understand and I hear you, and it kind of goes back to where we started, I think, which, how do we manage this parking lot? And one of the suggestions that we made very early on is, do we designate a certain number for visitors, contractors, those types, either through delineation, and do we limit a certain number that can be used for islanders, residents? That still may be an option that could be considered. But I think that we have to take a look at this and say, they were responsive to a situation with parking on a public road. And now we're putting that parking on private property. Or you can call it public property if you want to consider Fire Island, but in this case, I consider them an entity, being a private landowner. And we're removing that hazard from the public way and putting it back on the applicant's burden on their property. Now, as I suggested, I've put conditions in there where we could do monitoring. And I think that in the end, that is the only solution, because we're dealing with so many unknowns, that I think this has to be monitored to find to be successful or not successful.
But Jim,
The
I
question,
don't
and the
think-
question will be, is if it's not successful, what teeth do you have to enforce?
But in our public hearing, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe the selectmen are getting complaints, but I have not heard of complaints from the residents on parking, on Islanders parking along Cape Road.
Okay.
Am I wrong? Did I miss that completely?
Well, no, but I mean, I think it's only
But-
common sense that when you park on a road like that with that kind of traffic volume, you're putting potential for a safety issue. And
Yeah, but you don't alleviate that if you don't have the sufficient parking.
Well, you alleviate if you have no parking, you don't allow them to park there.
What the ferries for, so they can go to the
Sure.
island.
Yes. Steve?
I'd really like to make this clear that this was brought to us as a project to improve safety. At the last meeting, I suggested we allow everything west of Raymond Cape Road to go ahead and be done, because I do believe it's been shown that that will alleviate any queuing on Raymond Cape Road. And it's not the parking issue on Raymond Cape, it was the queuing on Raymond Cape. So let's keep those two separate. At that point, the applicant said, but there'll be no parking lot. So it became clear to me, is this a parking lot issue or is this a safety issue? Because I think I've shown pretty effectively that, in fact, you're making the safety issue worse when the parking lot's involved. I have no problem doing the project west of Raymond Cape to make this a safer situation. The parking lot makes it inherently less safe. So the parking lot is the big question everyone's having. If we want a safer situation, let's just do the part to the west of Raymond Cape.
And there's a comment I want to add to that too, and it's in agreement with other comments on the board that this project was initially presented to us as a safety issue. And the most common sense way of solving the safety issue is to queue traffic to the ferry on the right side of the road going down into the drop off to the ferry. The applicant has consistently refused and ignored our request to discuss that with the town of Raymond. And this has morphed into providing a parking lot as a major use to, let's get some cars on the ferry when they want to go over that way. And that's not the way it was originally presented to the board. And I find that quite objectionable.
Just
Good, Mark.
I thank the board for its comments, and I understand the concern that you have about the definition of municipal use. We, at the beginning of this project, obviously, we had to check in to make sure that we were on reasonably firm ground with meeting, minimum requirements such as that. So we cleared it with the folks that make those judgments, and we relied on those judgments, and that's why we're moving forward. So I understand your argument. I just wanted to acknowledge it. In terms of the number of parking spaces and the comment that you made about adding the number of...
Yep.
The difficulty is that at any given time, like a day of the week, for example, the use of the parking lot might be different than it is going to be on the weekend, and the mix of folks using it is going to be different. For example, the contractors likely aren't going to be working on the weekends. There'll be more contractors in the parking lot or parking on the side of the road as they do now during the week than there are on the weekends. And of course, on the weekends, you get more use of people who come in for the weekend. So it's a moving target. Bill's analysis is a statistical projection. It's based on more data than we had, thank you. I mean, what you did helped us understand better the kinds of uses that the parking lot might be put to. So it was a useful exercise. But in the end, I think we ended up concluding that the number of parking spaces was reasonable. We're in about the right place. Bob, you asked, rhetorically asked the question, is there enough room to add more parking spaces? Yes, there's more than enough. We could double or triple it easily, and not a problem. So there's plenty of room to expand. In fact, this is, as we've discussed in the past, we've done some thinking about if demand increases. If we knew demand was going to be bigger, we would probably come before you with more spaces. But there is a level of uncertainty. To characterize it as totally unknown, though, I don't think is fair. I think we have a reasonable person's estimate based on what we had, anecdotal and historical data and intuition based on folks that have lived there for years. And in addition to that, because of your request for a study, we looked at it some more. And what it said is, I'm glad we didn't go with 35. 43 is probably closer to where we ought to be. It's, as Bill pointed out, it's notoriously difficult to take the results from a survey, someone who said, yeah, I will park there, but when they actually have to do the walking from hence to thence, it may not be quite so attractive. So who knows? My own gut says that we're probably going to have quite a few empty parking spaces up there for a while. But I think over time, it will evolve and it will get used. The issue of the safety, I've heard it, a couple of you said it, that the whole reason for this project is safety. And that's really not fair either. That's a piece of it. I think that the town fathers of Fry Island recognize that right now, I've forgotten exactly how many lots are undeveloped, but there are a significant number of lots undeveloped out there. If the economy, if it ever picks up again, let's hope it does, picks up again and those lots develop, there'll be more pressure on the ferry service. And because of the short distance, adding another ferry just doesn't work. They just get in each other's way. You can't increase the capacity. So the way you increase the capacity is to get more people going across per load, and that's great. And the way you do that is to get you either get more cars, which is impossible, or you get more people per car, which is possible. Or we could have a passenger ferry, or, there are a number of different solutions, but that's also in flux. So that's another piece of this. In terms of the safety, though, Bill did an analysis, a very good statistical analysis of the peak usages on of the ferry, which are very accurate, the number of cars that are used, so on and so forth. He backed into, again, quite accurately, what the peak queue length would be, for the worst, weekend of the year. And that's assuming that everything's going fine, that we don't break, ferry doesn't break down, we don't have nobody has a heart attack on the island that shuts the ferries down for everyone. But, so we ended up with 34 cars that would be in queue waiting for the ferry on that peak day. Just to kind of put that in context for you, I plotted that on this plan just as the land sits right now. This is kind of the way it is out there right now with no improvements shown. Now now of course then you ask, well, how close are these cars going to get together? And 25 feet is what you normally, if you were doing parallel parking, designing on the side of the road, you'd have your cars 25 feet on center so they could get out. Some people will put the nose of their car right on the bumper of the, and some of them like to have plenty of space there. I'm more of the plenty of space. I don't like to be in a line where I can't sneak out if I have to. So I don't know what that is, but so based on that, I've kind of given you both edges, if you will. This plan shows those 34 cars in
We're going to
line.
have to spin it just a little bit so Bill can.
Oh, yes.
He can't.
I'm sorry about that. I guess the camera can see.
Yeah,
both
just spin it
ways.
for a second. Just.
Can you see that?
I can see it fine, yeah, I can see it very
So you can see that at 25 speed, and again, our queue, because we were going with 2 lanes, we've backed the front of the queue up to here. Where right now, the stop line is way down here. So this is those 34 cars, and you can see that it backs up all the way around, here like this. Okay, now that's 25 feet on center. I also did a plan showing 20 feet on center. So it compresses a little bit. And this symbol is a fairly small car. That's the car I'm driving. It's a economy car. You get the idea.
Yeah.
At 20 feet on center, it's backed up almost to the bend. So the idea of the queue being a safety issue, I remember our first meeting, Wayne Fournier stood up here and talked for at least a half an hour about how concerned he was about the potential for a rear-end collision. It hasn't happened yet. And that's something to be grateful for. But my common sense says that's not a good situation. Now, with this one lane, the parking that we're referring to, which is required, we need parking there. As Bill indicated, historically we're going to get anywhere from 25 to 35 cars to get parked. And right now they park on the edge of the road, on the shoulder right through here. And it spills out onto the Cape Road here and here. So we need parking. Now, if we put the double queue in here, we eliminate all this parking, and we're going to be pushing all the parking out onto the Cape Road. So I think that the town of Fire Island has recognized if we're going to try to solve this problem, we've got to provide parking. And long term, as the island gets bigger, the town of Fire Island is going to have to work with the residents of Raymond Cape and work through this issue because we're neighbors. There's no other way around it. And we're not adverse to working with the town. And I think there have already been efforts on the part of the government at Fire Island to actually make contact with the folks. But where we are right now is And whether this ever gets built, who knows? But where we are right now, I think is the town of Highland would like to get approval for this.
Okay.
We recognize that it's imperfect. But that doesn't mean it's not well thought out, because I think it is. In fact, of all the projects I've ever worked on, I've spent more time thinking about this. But it is, we acknowledge it's imperfect. We just don't think that it rises to the level that, respectfully, we disagree with you, that I think that what we're proposing here is actually going to be safer. This is going to be a safer situation, and that's because this is the elephant in the room. This is that queue backing out onto the Cape Road on a summer evening with someone barreling around this corner here. That's an accident. That is an offender bender. That's going to be a nasty one.
So Mark, could you, while you're there,
Yes.
we need to get back on track here, but could you answer for us, we have in numerous meetings expressed our objections to the plan as presented. And you have said on numerous occasions that it's not the best plan, and kind of repeated tonight that the plan does have problems. Could you tell
I
us?
said it's imperfect.
Imperfect. Has problems. Could you tell us kind of briefly why, even after we've kind of gone through and said that we don't like this plan and the reasons why we don't like this plan, the same plan continues to come back to us over, every time you're presenting the same plan with some minor modifications. So my question is, why?
Well, I think that some of the suggestions that have been made, respectfully, haven't been completely thought through, because we have actually considered some of them and rejected them. The other thing you have to recognize is we can only propose on land that we own. And I think that our contention, and we believe this with a straight face, that we believe that what we have presented to you, especially after the improvements that have been made based on the comments and of yourselves and your able planner, we believe that with the changes that have been made, that we meet the requirements of this ordinance. Okay. And that we would like to, again, with respect, we request to have you vote this project.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that certainly is my intention this evening. We've been at this for a while.
Yes, we had. Not that I don't like you guys.
We like seeing you, Mark.
For the most part. But I think, Bill, would you like to comment on some of the things that were said, especially the intersection safety issues that you brought up? I think that would be appropriate.
Sure, that's fine.
First, just, after the last meeting, I checked with the Department of Transportation, and they have safety records going back to 1989. Before that, they get thrown away. But that's 23 years worth. Over that 23 years from Wabanach Road, did I pronounce that correctly? Yep. Okay, Wabanach Road to the end on Cape Road, there were 2 accidents in that whole 23 years. Okay, only one of them was in a format so you could tell what type of accident it was, and it appears to be a run-off-the-road accident, probably happened in the wintertime. And I would also indicate that these are reportable accidents. They have to be a certain value. Right now, I think it's $1,000, but over the last 20 years, it used to be, 35 years ago, it was $200. So it has to be that much damage, or there has to be a personal injury for it to be required to be submitted to the state police as a record. So there may well have been, and I'm sure there have been, people who go off the road in the middle of the winter and their neighbor pulls them out of the snowdrift or whatever. Those things never get recorded. Or somebody that hits a tree and doesn't do enough damage, they don't get reported. So that's just for the accidents. In fact, you've been very fortunate on that. It's probably because you don't have any through traffic going on Cape Road. Everybody that drives down there, with the exception of people like me that are doing a traffic study that hadn't been down there before, or contractors, or a new guy that's delivering oil, everybody knows that road. They know where everything is. And that eliminates a lot of the, you aren't usually surprised. Okay, with regard to four-legged intersections versus three-legged intersections, accident frequency in a lot of cases is related to several things, one of them being volume. The more cars, the more chances, more opportunities. Second thing is the number of potential conflicts. Okay, a three-legged intersection has 4 conflicts. A four-legged intersection has 12. So it's essentially 3 times as likely. But that also assumes that, that accidents happen with some random reason, and they don't. Accidents are people that make a mistake, and they do something they shouldn't have done. And, in this case, I can't necessarily say 3-legged intersections are always safer than 4-legged intersections, because when we do projects, and there's an existing development with a driveway going in, and you're gonna put something in across the street, and you go to the Department of Transportation, they say, we want that driveway located directly aligned with the one across the street. We don't want it down the street 150 feet, because what happens is people on the main line, you got a conflict point, driveway 1. All of a sudden, you got a second conflict point, 200 or 300 feet later. They feel, and I agree, you put 4-legged intersection, you got 1 conflict point that you have to pay attention to. Once you're beyond it, you're back on the way of going. And in fact, it's more than 45 or 50% of accidents occur at intersections. It's 45 or 50% that occur at intersections of public roads. But driveways, it probably, I don't have any statistics, but it's probably 90% involve conflicting movements in and out of driveways. And that's what causes, and again, part of it is random, part of it is how many times do you present a driver. You've all driven up and down Route 302. And one of the best things that's happening on a strip like 302 is that all the smaller uses are getting bought up and being consolidated into one larger use, and they cut down the number of driveways, because all those driveways, every one of them constantly requires your attention. And the more you can reduce that, the less. But there's really no way of predicting accidents and predicting safety. We're dealing with a lot of variables that are there, and it's not a simple mathematical way of handling it.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Steve?
With all due respect, these are published scientific studies. These are actual studies, and yes, they are showing 1.1, this is rural intersections. And you did actually I want to thank you. I think you really actually are making my point of, number 1, we've not had an accident on that road, and number 2, a 4-legged intersection creates 12 points of conflict, and because of your design, which I brought up the first time we met, you are increasing those conflicts by making everyone going to the island pass through that intersection twice. So you're increasing the volume simply by your design. All right? And I think you can predict. Historical averages show that 1.1 accidents per year on average for a 4-legged intersection in a rural area. That's a fact. That's a scientific statistical number, which I have to go by, because these are independent people, not paid engineers. This is an independent study. Right now we have a situation of 0 accidents on there versus 1.1 per year. My requirement is that this project must be as safe as the current situation. And you cannot convince me with opinion that an engineer feels that it's going to be safer. Statistically, it's not going to be. So I'll leave it at that.
No, that's, we're done with that. All right. You saying you told his name? Yeah, many times.
This is just a rhetorical question. It's probably going to be ruled not germane by the chairman, but I'm going to pose it anyway. If the town of Fire Island and the town of Raymond widened the right side of Cape Road for queuing down the right side of Cape Road, and then posted no parking for a quarter mile in each direction on the side of the road, what would the options of the town of Fire Island be at that point? People would have to take the ferry over to the island and park on the island.
Yeah, you're right.
What I had to say.
All right, so we're back to where we were, will we maintain, we need to get past the will maintain safe and healthy conditions in order to get into, section 15.
You need a motion,
So we'll need,
not for me.
we need a motion.
On item 1, we'll maintain safe and healthful conditions.
Correct.
I move that the applicant has not met the burden of safe and healthful conditions.
Let's make it in the affirmative. Let's just make the motion in the affirmative. You don't have to vote yes.
You can make the motion positive, it doesn't mean you have to.
Oh, and then we vote
You don't
against
have to
it.
vote
Okay, okay. I move that the applicant has presented a design that maintains safe and healthful conditions.
I'll second that.
All right, is there a discussion? Nobody wants to, Bruce, nothing? All right,
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I interject for just a second?
I don't mind at all.
I just want to interject because there will be a written decision that will guide the applicant. If this vote is in the negative, it will guide an applicant as to the basis of a denial of the application. There has been some discussion as to what would underlie that decision, not a lot, and some of it has been based on evidence that's not actually in the record. So I would recommend if you do have something to add on your vote and want to extrapolate as to the basis of your decision based on evidence that's in the record, I would recommend that.
Even though we've already had that discussion leading up to this point, you feel we should basically restate it at this point?
Oh, what I was saying is some of the information that was stated is not in the record, such as the studies that were mentioned.
You want to name
You can't introduce evidence as a board member.
authors of the report or
So I
what
can't,
was reported?
you think I can't use this?
That's correct. It's not in the record.
It's basically a biased opinion because you're the only one that has that, he's had that information or has had time to review it. Just legally.
I just wanted to let you know that that's what your written decision will have, is evidence, that part of the evidence that you're basing your decision on is not in the record. So if you have some other things to add, I just wanted to point that out before you voted.
So how do I get this in the record?
You can't get that. in the
Can't.
record.
Can't, all right.
Well, we have a motion, but
The only way it could be
Chris,
presented
you have
on the
something to say?
record is if someone else who was a citizen came in to present it as evidence. Namely, probably someone from the Cape, but as a board member, you can't introduce evidence.
Right, but you can still make it, you
Yep.
can still make your own
Yep,
decision.
of course.
Right.
Yep.
Well, just to add a comment to that, aside from what he read from his report, I mean, I don't think the applicant has demonstrated, after several requests, to show that it's safer, based on the standard that's in our guidelines.
well, but be clear, it doesn't have to be safer, they have to maintain safety and
safe.
health as
Okay,
safe.
it hasn't met that standard then.
Okay, just don't say safer.
And I think that's all there is. I don't know what else, you can argue it, and some of it's subjective, and you've got someone who's done his work, and we've done our work, and it's still, with zero accidents, the way, you're gonna create a parking lot across the road and cross the street. Simple logic to me says it's not gonna be as safe.
Yeah, and going back to the idea of widening Cape Road, if the engineers had come up with two competing designs to present to the planning board with discussions by engineers, pro and con, the merits of each design, and we had a plan that showed queuing along the right side of Cape Road with engineering discussion of that versus this, I personally feel I know what the consensus would have been. I've already stated my feelings on that, but based upon the four-way application that keeps coming up in front of us again and again, I don't think it has the merits of maintaining safe and healthful conditions as opposed to what is there now. Whereas I think a widening of the Cape would.
Before you do it, I just wanted to, something that Stephen said earlier, I just wanted to make sure you understood that not every person or every car that gets on the ferry has to do that route.
I understand that.
You understand, okay, so it was just hyperbole.
Right.
Sorry. That only occurs in peak times.
I'd just like to add a quick comment. Obviously, I haven't been here throughout the process, so I haven't seen the multiple revisions. I'm new to the board. The only evidence that I've heard is what's been presented here tonight and the comments from the other members of the board that have been presented and the studies that the municipality of Frye Island has presented. And honestly, I can't see from the evidence that's been presented how it would be any less safe than the current existing situation. I can't say that it would be more safe, but I can see that, again, not having been involved in the rest of the process, if safety was originally presented as the issue for doing this, then perhaps that's another thing. But if there were other reasons, just purely for the purposes that Frye Island wanted to develop the parking lot beyond the safety, I can't see that there's been any evidence that's been introduced by anyone that this has been going to be less safe than the current arrangement. Not to say that it will be more safe, but as the planner pointed out, that's not the point of the standard. The standard is will it be as safe as what is currently in existence, and no one has presented any evidence to the contrary that this will be less safe, other than, again, the study that Mr. Linney presented, but which isn't currently in evidence or can be considered by the members of the board. That's just my own personal opinion on it.
Well, the way I read number one, will maintain safe and healthful conditions, obviously that says it will provide a condition that is either as safe or more safe than what's there now. Otherwise, you're not maintaining it, you're degrading it. So there's an equivalency or an improvement assumed by that statement, and I don't think that the design meets that standard.
Is it possible for me to say something?
No.
Is it too late? Okay, that's fine.
I think, so, Phil, what would,
Thanks for your comments.
in addition to a redesign, what would we be looking for to be able to determine that it's safe?
That's the problem. He created this intersection.
Right.
And to me, the problem with the design is they haven't, as was said, if they took care of the left side of the road, or right-hand side of the road coming in, that solves all their problems of safety. The parking area just complicates the whole thing and makes it unsafe. So there's like two separate issues in my mind. The parking lot's a parking lot, whatever it is, and
And
the
just
standards
do the
are
parking lot,
okay.
standalone parking lot.
But because this parking lot is tied into the safety issue and queuing and all of that,
Right,
it makes it an unsafe situation.
makes sense.
It's that simple. If the parking lot was down the road, if it was like Shabig Island has a commuter parking lot or something else going on, that would be a different set of standard, with different problem, because you haven't created this dangerous intersection.
I was leaning towards agreement right there for a minute. Yes, Jim?
So if I'm clear, is the board, the safety issue that, I just want to be clear on the safety. Is the safety pedestrians crossing the road or vehicles crossing the road?
Well, both.
Both.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear, so
Right.
that, because, we do have an allowance currently for off-site parking. And that includes opposite side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at that, you're saying that basically the safety issue created by this off-site parking lot is due to the unique features of the current road?
Yeah, because I've asked if it was an off-site parking lot with the pedestrians, and you do what the board has suggested a number of times, expand Cape Road, you could have the pedestrian crossing to the far side of the ferry, and that traffic would never cross. But as of right now, they're going to cross.
I just wanted to be clear.
And
Yep.
if you took the queuing lane out of the parking lot, and this is where it gets back to it's so tied together, you would have an entrance off Quarry Cove and an exit up to 302, and there wouldn't be this four-way intersection. The queuing, in essence, the queuing lane, the parking lot does not create the intersection. The queuing aspect through the parking lot is what creates the intersection, and in my opinion, the unsafe situation. So I don't think I think our parking ordinances are fine. It's just this combined use.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so the motion is, just to recast, that the application as presented maintains a safe and healthful condition.
We want to be clear what a negative and a positive
So-
vote is on the,
Right, so a vote in favor, a yes vote says that, that you feel that the applicant has submitted sufficient testimony that the application as presented maintains a safe and healthful condition, and a no vote is a vote against the project as presented. Any other discussion? Questions? All right, all those in favor? Ben, you can't vote.
Can't vote.
No.
But, good try.
Oh, come on. You haven't been here for the whole time.
One, all those opposed? Four, so Ben, you abstained. 1, 4, 1.
You would have to go through the review of the previous documents.
All right, so Mary, that pretty much ends, we have stopped at this point in every previous time without going into any of the other conditions for approval. Or any discussions for any of the other problems.
Right.
It would seem to me that that's probably, we should do the same way at this point now without continuing on. Unless,
I did read that typically boards do not, just because one item was in the negative, boards continue through the process and review the rest of the items, such that if there's another item that could be a roadblock, it's disclosed.
Okay.
In the event that somebody appeals.
Exactly. You need to go through all of the criteria so the applicant is aware of
Okay.
the full picture. And
all right, then we will move to, I think, parking areas under shoreline zoning requirements was the,
or number 4 on page 5 here, will not have adverse impact on spawning ground.
no, that's already been approved.
About 0.
We've already approved that. So I think the item G is our next thing that is not,
Right, which you-
did not approve.
What you need to do now, obviously you can't do G because that's part of the site plan standards.
Right,
So what I would recommend you do is go through the site plan standards, which starts on page 10.
All right,
I don't know why we got Greek symbols on this, but I have on mine at least.
all right, so we are on, if you're on the planners memo, we're on page 10. We're gonna look, we have never done the site plan review standards because we've never gotten this far in the application process. The first standard that we're looking at is the preservation of landscaping. As presented. Because Mark, I just asked you on the revised plans, has a additional clearing because of the site, to maintain site distances?
Yeah.
Is that gonna be revegetated?
It will have to be remain trim.
Right.
It is going to be revegetated.
And so it'll be lawn, grass?
I think what I put in there is erosion control measures. So it'll stabilize it and then,
And just maintain?
yeah.
And is that, sorry, Mr. Chair, will that be documented on the drawings, that it will be the responsibility, because, I'm not playing right in front of it, is any portion of that in the right-of-way?
Some of it is outside the right-of-way, yeah.
Some of it's outside the right-of-way, but we should just make note that, that'll need to be documented on the drawing, that it will be maintained by the applicant and not the town.
Okay.
You mean maintaining
The clearing and keep the vegetation down to site distance.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions on the vote from the board?
I have a comment.
Yes?
Their proposal includes cutting a 24-inch maple tree that's within 100 feet of the shore.
Mm-hmm.
That, according to the point system in our shoreline zoning ordinance, would require 8 points to be replanted on the site. Could they show that on the plan as well?
I think they do.
We've added some trees out at the end of the intersection.
They're not within 100 feet of the shore.
We'll put whatever plants, whatever trees you like in there.
just need
You can add those in if you like.
I'd like to see them added on the plan within 100 feet.
Of the shore.
Yeah.
In the
And-
area.
And to get a point, you need to plant at least a tree 2 to 3 inches at 4.5 feet, that's 1 point. Or if you plant trees that are 4 to 5 inches, you can get 2 points. It would require 4 trees, either 8 or 4 trees. And I can discuss that with you further.
That won't be a problem.
Just give me a call.
We'll stick it in there. Yeah.
You want it within 100 feet.
Within 100 feet of the
Within-
tree that's being cut, is that?
No,
what-
within
In the
shore.
buffer zone.
Oh, in the buffer zone, okay.
Of the shoreline buffer.
Probably within that 50 by 20 foot square.
Right in here?
25.
Yeah, we may have to shoehorn them in, but we'll get them in.
All right, no problem. Thanks, Chris. Anyone else have any comments? All right, why don't we go through these quickly then, one by one, so we need a motion for the landscaping. Anybody want to tackle that one? Go ahead, Greg.
It's just the preservation of landscape.
Yeah,
I move that the applicant has met the requirements of preservation of landscape.
any other discussion from the board? Was there a second, actually?
Second, doesn't it also have to include those have to be included in the plan? Is that-
Yes, yeah.
With,
So we're gonna, yeah, with the addition that,
that the point system be maintained
with the removal of, yeah, the 20 foot.
following the removal of the maple tree. The 8-pointer.
Nice one.
Bill seconded, is there any more discussion?
Yeah, I guess a question I have, do the tree buffers include, by definition, the trees that are planned to be cut out along Cape Road to improve sight distances? And does the point system apply to that at all?
No, that's beyond the 100 feet.
The point system
Within
only applies to
of the
100 feet,
shoreline, okay, right.
within the resource protection of 100 feet.
Okay,
Is that a concern of anybody on the board, that improving the sight line and cutting down that much growth, should there be any offset that we would like to ask for replanting elsewhere on the site? If there's probably any place else to plant, because it's all
plant
forest.
it, yeah.
Yeah, right,
Well, they could cut something down and plant something different.
yeah.
Mother Nature does that.
You okay if it's planted by a municipality? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, let's do that one. No building, so we're done with B. Vehicular access is our next one. How do we get from B to X there?
It's somehow when it converted from my word to the town's word, it converted to
Oh.
Greek symbols.
Okay.
So that should be C.
C.
Yeah, parking and circulation is delta.
I think this one really addresses one of our concerns.
Actually,
And
Chair,
Yes?
you actually read the specific ordinance. There's actually an interesting aspect in here. It says the proposed layout shall ensure that vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic conditions shall not exceed reasonable limits for the neighborhood.
continue,
This-
continue
Shoreline
reading,
zone.
continue reading,
Site plan review.
right.
Special consideration should be given to the location, number, and control of access points, adequacy of adjacent streets, traffic flow, site distances, turning lanes, existing or proposed traffic signalization, and pedestrian vehicular contacts.
Thank you.
If you look at the situation of this neighborhood, we're putting a lot more, with this, a lot more traffic, pedestrian and vehicular, into this neighborhood.
For the record, you might want to state the article and the paragraph, and then read the paragraph slowly so it
Okay.
goes into the record cleanly.
It's Article 10, it's E, criteria and
What
standards.
page you on?
C,
You're C, okay.
page 103 of 141. The proposed layout shall ensure that vehicular and pedestrian traffic conditions shall not exceed reasonable limits for the neighborhood. Special consideration shall be given to the location, number, and control of access points, adequacy of adjacent streets, traffic flow, sight distances, turning lanes, and existing or proposed traffic signalization and pedestrian vehicular context.
But they're not adding any traffic. How could they be, it's the same traffic, the same amount of cars, right?
Not through that intersection. You're on peak times, you're doubling up. And you got a lot of people, more people walking from the parking lot across Raymond Cape to the ferry.
Plus a parking lot of up to 45 to 50 cars, which isn't there now, which creates the additional vehicular and pedestrian traffic, because people are parking instead of taking their vehicles over to the island.
Might be extra pedestrian traffic, but it would be less vehicular traffic then. If people are parking instead of going to get on the ferry like they're going to get on the ferry now, wouldn't that be less cars going to get on the ferry?
More cars at that one intersection.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
Jim,
that-
help us out.
I think what you're getting at is currently Landing Road is the destination.
Mm-hmm.
With the parking circulation as it is, they have to go past Landing Road through Quarry Cove Road into the parking lot. So that's where from Landing Road to Quarry Cove
Okay.
Road is your increase in traffic, because those trips currently do not go
Exist.
beyond that.
Well, egress trips too. Well,
Well, egress would be
not
the
really.
same.
I guess if people took their car to the island as 50 cars over there versus 50 in the parking lot, when they leave, it's the same number of cars leaving.
Right.
So that's not an increase.
I just wanted to point that out to them.
Okay, I think you're right. It does the way.
But you do definitely have a pedestrian vehicular
Yep,
movement
right.
that you don't have now.
Okay, so, motion for C? Parking and circulation? Whoop, I'm sorry. Vehicular access, I'm sorry.
So the motion is that he has met the standard for vehicular access, even if we disagree with the plan.
Correct.
He still meets the standard, so to speak, because he's provided us enough information to make a judgment that the vehicular access has been provided. Not a safety issue, just that he shows that the vehicular access for pedestrians.
Well, I think Steve, right, but I think Steve's point is that it doesn't conform because it increases the traffic flow.
Right, Steve's point, you're asking for a motion about.
Oh, yes, correct,
about this.
correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
which is what, right, yes, I'm sorry.
So we're not saying we agree with the
Correct.
plan and its vehicular access, we're just saying he has
He has
presented it, and
presented.
there is vehicular access on the plan.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
I move there is vehicular access on the plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Which way did you go? Were you in favor? Okay.
2 to 3?
We weren't
Yes.
passing on safety.
One,
No,
two,
but
three,
it's-
one.
If you read, the layout has to ensure
Vote on any of these.
that the vehicular pedestrian traffic shall not exceed reasonable limits for the neighborhood.
But that's a safety issue.
Well, if it's under that,
Per se.
but it's under that ordinance.
Maybe we need to revisit that then, and reopen
already
it for a
failed.
revote.
Somebody in the affirmative would have to.
Because my question was, are we voting on whether he has provided vehicular access?
Well, he is the affirmative vote.
He is the affirmative vote.
Then he can read.
You can request a revote.
Well, I'd like to request a revote and have a more clear understanding of how Steve's point is going to tie into our understanding of how we're going to vote on the motion for vehicular access.
Okay, Steve, would you like to explain it?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm going to the ordinance, rather than any write-up. In this, you have to look at the ordinance and say, does this project meet this ordinance?
Does it meet the standard of
which is, meet
criteria?
the standard, which is the proposed layout, his design, shall ensure that vehicular and pedestrian traffic conditions shall not exceed reasonable limits for the neighborhood.
Which to me goes back to safety, but I understand your direct linear correlation of language.
Right.
Vehicular access, vehicular
And I
access.
think it's specifically, as Tim pointed out, because we're increasing, the plan increases the vehicular traffic in our
And pedestrian.
determination. Yeah, pedestrian, not necessarily past the.
Do I need to move for a revote?
No, you have it. So,
Okay.
we,
There
oh, there was no second?
No, there's no second.
Does that have to be an affirmative?
I think you just cover your bases, you should just do it that way. He's made a motion to revote,
He did make a
He made a motion to
I'll
revote.
second the motion.
Thank you.
so now.
Now we can revote.
You have to make a motion again.
You have to-
You have to vote on the motion to revote.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
This is the motion to
To
revote.
Revote. All right.
Reconsider,
So-
reconsider.
Reconsider.
So all those in favor of reconsidering the motion? All right, 5-0.
Reconsider. Okay, now you can.
Now we need a motion. Back
Okay.
to your original motion that you made.
I will move the vehicular access issue. How's that?
Any more discussion?
Needs to be seconded, I'll second it.
We all, yeah, okay. So what, all that happened there, Bruce did not realize how he was voting on the first motion. So since he voted in the affirmative, he requested that we revote. You seconded that motion, we voted on that and approved it. We now have the original motion is back on the table. It's been seconded by
Steve.
So we're voting. Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? And one abstention.
Nothing to lose.
Now, the next one is safety.
All right, next is parking, parking and circulation, item D. And here's the layout design of all means of vehicular and pedestrian circulation, including walkways, interior drives, and parking areas shall consider general interior circulation, separation of pedestrians and traffic flow, service, traffic loading areas, and the arrangement and use of parking areas. These facilities shall be safe and convenient, and in so far as possible shall not detract from the proposed buildings and neighboring properties. I think we pretty much covered this.
Need a
Does
motion?
anyone? Yep, we could do that right.
I move that the project meets the criteria for parking and circulation.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'll just go to the safety and convenience statement in the last sentence. It relates back to safety and the necessity of people using a parking lot to leave a parking lot and approach an unsafe intersection.
How's the intersection become unsafe? I always come back to this. I mean, an intersection's an intersection. You cross intersections all the time. I mean, is the intersection, I mean, we don't like we're considering the flow of traffic, right? But it's the pedestrians are approaching that intersection.
This is both traffic and pedestrians.
Right, so I'm just saying,
But the standard says that these facilities, meaning the parking and circulation, shall be safe and convenient. And our argument has been all along that not only the intersection, but the creating of parking and the intermingling of vehicles and pedestrians and the increase in traffic of both vehicles and pedestrians is an unsafe condition. So I do not feel that the plan as presented provides parking and circulation facilities that are safe and convenient because of the increase in traffic and the intermingling of
okay.
vehicles.
But it's really the
and
vehicle, not the pedestrian.
Both.
Why?
think-
Why would it be pedestrian? I mean,
Well, it says
pedestrians
vehicular and
walking-
pedestrian circulation.
Yeah, but I think our concern is the vehicles, right, and not the pedestrians.
They're gonna intermingle. When you have people parking their cars, they're gonna be wandering across the parking lot to get to the dedicated walkway if they decide to use it, as opposed to just ignoring the walkway and crossing where they want. You know, you've got,
Maybe I'm misinterpreting, not interpreting this correctly, but all that we have, we look at the pedestrian movement, right? The pedestrian movement is leaving a parking lot. They have a walkway to get to an intersection,
if they choose to use it.
if they choose to use, but it's there, right? The applicant's applying the walkway, and they cross an intersection. Now, the intersection has more traffic in it because of the design, so I can understand that our decision along the traffic lines with we're putting more cars there than we need to, but I don't think we can say that's a pedestrian problem.
It's not just pedestrian.
That standard has both traffic and pedestrian.
Right, both cars and.
So it has to meet both?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Because it says vehicular and not vehicular or.
Pedestrian.
Okay.
I'll move that the applicant has met the criteria for
Already
parking and
moved that.
circulation.
We already have a motion
It's
before
already
us.
motion.
Oh,
That was our discussion.
I want to double.
No, I second it.
And you did
Yeah.
second it. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Concerned here for a minute. All opposed? And abstentions? 141.
E
See,
is surface
E.
water drainage.
Haven't we already done this one? Isn't,
Well, you did it under shoreline zoning. Now you have to do it, you have to meet the
Oh.
standard under site plan. I mean, essentially you have, by your vote on the shoreline zoning, you essentially, but you need to replicate that for the site plan review.
okay.
And I would say, you have an approval from the DEP now, too, in your package.
Right, we have made that a
Right.
conditional
Right.
request.
And there is no requirement on this one of retention of stormwater on site in this ordinance, all right.
No. it's in the-
We'd already decided
Right.
we would go with what the DEP deemed acceptable, right?
Mhm.
I'll move surface water drainage has been properly presented on the plan, is acceptable.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? 5-0. Utilities is next. The site plan shall show what provisions are being proposed for water supply and wastewater disposal. Electric, telephone, and other utility lines shall be installed on the ground.
I see there's a note in here that requesting a letter from both the power and the telephone utility companies. They're aware of the project. And the request for utility relocations or installation of new poles, and also the statement that any power poles or transformers installed or relocated shall be noted to be made at the applicant's expense. We're so far from approving the plan, I don't think that's a conditional item. I think that should probably be tabled and made something that the applicant needs to comply with. But it's not a conditional approval item, is the better way to put it.
Well, either they have it on the plan or you have to make it a condition. Because right now, we don't have that on the drawings. We don't have the information from the utility companies.
Well, in other words, I'm saying since we're not approving the plan, we're not gonna make it a condition that as long as he adds it before we sign on the title block, that it's okay.
Make it a condition, and if they add it to the plan, we can remove it.
Yeah, good point, okay. I move that we make it a condition that the applicant request a letter from the power company and telephone utility company that they are aware of the project and that there are requests for utility relocation and possible installation of new poles, and a statement on the plan that any power poles or transformers installed or relocated shall be noted to be made at the applicant's expense, and that, of course, would also include any connection appurtenances, conduits, wires, digging and backfilling, any protective soil erosion control measures or whatever that are necessary with that type of activity.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Mark, you okay with? Okay.
I'm just the one to provide at this point.
I have a question.
Well, make sure you're still awake.
The motion includes discussion of installation of poles, whereas the ordinance requires that all utilities be installed underground. You're assuming, these poles would be not on their site?
Correct, these are the
Correct.
poles that are, that'll be relocated for the alignment of the driveways or whatever the design requires.
Okay, do we need to include it in the motion that all utility, or is that just in the ordinance name?
It's in the ordinance, and
Okay.
they provided that they're underground for the parking lot.
Okay, I was trying to look quickly and see, didn't see them.
Does that need to be a part of the motion, or just understood because
Just
of the
understood.
ordinance?
All right.
Okay.
It's on the design plans.
Steve, you second that, right? Is that right?
No, Greg did.
Greg did. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention, 501. Special features?
They've actually,
We're on G.
with regards to special features, they have included, as I mentioned earlier, gates and access control devices for the 3 points of, I should say, 1 point of entry and 2 points of egress.
Any concerns?
So do we have to specify they're gonna keep the lot clean? Is that what that says?
No, that's the rationale for the special features,
Oh, okay.
that we want security so that it doesn't
I gotcha.
become a dumping ground. So by securing it, it prohibits that activity.
I have a question. What type of waste removal features are proposed or planned or envisioned? Trash cans chained to a tree, or are you gonna have a dumpster out there, or what?
I think it's basically a carry in, carry out kind of thing. There isn't, I mean, it's, there are no picnic areas or anything, it's just a parking lot. So,
Mark, will you have anything, I mean, because this is all one entity, the landing and the parking lot.
Yeah.
Is there anything at the landing, though, that there's any kind of trash to pick up there?
well, there is a small office there, so I suspect that there is a place for the folks that are in the office to discharge, but I'm quite sure it's a situation that, just like there aren't trash cans along, the side of Route 302 for the use of the, it's not intended to be an area that's going to be generating trash. However, the concern has been raised about maintenance of the lot, if there's litter and that sort of thing. And there is staff on the, the Raymond Cape side that would be policing, the parking lot, and will keep it, maintained appropriately, as they do all their property.
I don't know how the board feels, but
I mean, guess, I don't see anything in here that says we can mandate trash storage, per se, for the usage, correct, Jim?
I don't think that's one of our particular standards for waste.
But just logic, Mark tells me that, people are gonna come off the island and they're gonna have a bunch of stuff, they're not gonna wanna drive back to New Jersey and there's no trash can. It's gonna go on the ground and they're gonna leave.
If you look at the actual,
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not
Hasn't
doing it
been a
now.
problem today.
We'd have to, because we're not, because you.
At the parking lot, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Well, if that
I
happens,
think-
then staff will pick it up.
Right.
I mean, if we
I
provide,
wouldn't do
They'll
it,
pick
but
it up.
I'm not everybody. I know the way people litter around Raymond,
well, that would be something that would have to be picked up. I think that if you put trash cans out there, you're basically saying that this is a service that the town provides, and we don't want to attract trash. But we will pick it up if folks are.
It's gonna be a daily thing. It's gonna be a daily thing.
I'm not sure that I would
Oh.
agree with you.
I won't bore you with my dog walking and running around and how many, I pick up, over 25 years in Raymond, I pick up an average of 15 pounds of trash per roadside mile per year. So every road that's a mile long has 2 miles of roadside on it. And I have this 4-mile loop around where I walk my dogs or running. Year after year after year, I average 15 pounds or 30 pounds per lineal mile per year of trash that I pick up.
You
carry a spring scale around here?
That one didn't get away.
When I get home, I stand on a scale with this big bag of trash and weigh it, and I figured it all out.
You eat the roadkill?
Hey, we did, somewhere in here,
State
though,
trooper that said he ate roadkill.
we did talk about,
Because he's
a
underpaid.
plan, a written plan, a maintenance plan. Is that where, I mean, we've talked about it. I'm not sure where it's cropping up.
I'm not, it really doesn't fly into any of the criteria and standards that we have under site plan. It may have come under when we did shoreline zoning, I can't remember.
Yeah, I just don't want to lose track of it. I mean,
Right,
as long as
I,
it's-
you know, I mean, if you feel,
You got under K.
yeah,
Maybe that's a
solid waste,
CEO
sorry, yeah.
item, but it's really more pertinent to permitting discussions, I don't know.
If you were to include a note or a condition under that section, that the town would maintain the parking lot litter-free and will be inspected on a daily basis or a periodic basis.
It's in section K.
you could put it under environmental considerations under K, because I would consider that trash debris would be an
Okay.
environmental consideration.
That sounds good. That's nice, Mark.
What's the current Fry Island trash situation? Is it picked up, if you're, as per the residents?
Oh, I'm sure that they have,
No, I'm,
their own.
Casco, they have to take it up to the transfer station.
Just take it to
Raymond's
the dump.
picked up. It's picked up?
You have to take to the dump.
From
Okay.
Fry Island?
There's a dump on Fry Island.
On Fry Island.
You have to take your own trash to
Okay.
the dump, and it's open certain hours, and certain
Okay.
hours it's closed.
Thank
You can't go past, they've gated it off and put security cameras on it.
Is it a landfill or is it a transfer station?
It's a transfer station.
Okay.
They do recyclables and trash and construction, and they've recently started composting. It's pretty impressive.
We-
Drive through
Okay.
sometime.
Pros and cons, I understand what the applicant's saying, and we ended up putting dumpsters on our road and we attracted a lot more trash.
Right.
Because of that. But on the flip side, in my business, I don't know if you want to put this on the record, but you wouldn't believe the number of dirty diapers I had to pick up in the parking lot. So, it's on both sides.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll take up solid waste with K.
Okay, all right. So let's move, let's get past G.
Gates is the only thing, I've got gates and entrance barriers are the only thing I have under special features.
And they're on the plans already.
They're on the plans
Right,
currently,
so
correct,
we're
so.
fine.
I would move that the applicant has met the requirements for special features on the site plan review.
Right, seconded? Yep. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 5-0-1. Exterior lighting?
You have been given a lighting plan with foot candle measurements,
Right. And
and those conform to our standards?
we took off the additional lighting, right? That we were
Yeah.
somehow talked about, that's all
We,
gone.
it was a suggestion, we
Okay.
never put on.
Never put on, okay.
Move that the applicant has met the exterior lighting criteria.
Is there a second? Second. No. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, 1. Item I, emergency vehicle access. There's no buildings, there's no structures. No change to the landing structure.
Jim, what's your issue with winter? No one's gonna be in there in winter.
That's just it. Now it's blocked.
Okay.
My concern was if it
Wasn't blocked.
wasn't blocked, it could be a dumping ground, it could be party zone, it could be a lot of things, legal activities.
Aye, emergency vehicle access. Are we okay?
Yep. I move that the emergency vehicle access criteria has been met by the applicant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
It sounds to me from the language here that we need a statement on the plans that clear access will be provided through snow plowing through the driveways and parking area during the winter season.
Bruce, that was only if it wasn't gonna be blocked off in
Right.
the wintertime. It's gonna be blocked off now, so
nobody can get in.
The only thing, the only piece of that Bruce is correct is from Cape Road down to Landing Road. We want that maintained in case of winter accidents on the lake or accidents on the lake.
Okay, you're not concerned with a forest fire around the parking area or something like that?
Not during the winter, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm only concerned about keeping that access, which it is now.
Is that, okay.
Like the fire chief said, if he has to get in, he can.
Well, if there's 2 feet of snow, it makes it a little more difficult, but if, for the sake of, having access to Fry Island in the wintertime for emergency response, in case there's a fire out there,
Just don't dump magnesium.
Is that maintained now?
yes. We just want to keep it maintained.
Okay? All right. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? 5-1. Landscaping. No, because we're in the, I think we've already done our landscaping. Does anybody have anything else about landscaping? I think we've already addressed the one issue.
There were a few trees planted at, where they realigned the entrance at Landing Road, because as you can see from the old plan, it kind of veered off. Now it comes in more to a 90. In that little corner, there's some planting, so.
Yep. Okay.
Landscaping, right? I'll move that the applicant has met the criteria for landscaping.
Second.
Any discussion?
We need to have the language in here about the point system.
I think we already put that.
It's already taken care
put
of
that in
preservation.
Okay.
I didn't,
I knew we talked about it before, but I didn't know if it would flow automatically to the,
It's captured.
I've never caught this before, but particular attention should be paid to the use of planting to break up parking areas.
Well, they've got a buffer between the roads.
Oh, yeah, no, but I mean, it is in line with what your design was
Right.
for. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
Was there a motion? Am I behind? I'm sorry. And it's been seconded?
Yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And item K, then we'll pick up the, what do we call it, that's the one-liner that you said you were gonna look at. for
Solid waste removal.
Solid waste removal.
should that be formally or formally presented?
Formal.
Formal.
As in, not informal?
Oh, don't go with the colons now.
Okay. There really is no solid waste removal, is there?
No.
No. That's why I said there was a concern.
That goes back to the trash issue partially.
I think all you need to do there is just say if you have concerns about solid waste or environmental considerations, that maintenance provided routinely by the applicant at their with their responsibility or something of that nature.
Does that mean, the maintenance of the storm water runoff, the drainage and all that, I think that's part of that plan that we were talking about.
The maintenance of the
Maintenance.
stormwater?
Yeah,
That's all captured in the DEP.
yeah, okay.
There's actually a very formal maintenance program for that.
Does that cover all the considerations?
That considers all of the stormwater, yes. It doesn't capture solid waste or any trash or anything like that. DEP only captures stormwater.
Drainage within the parking area and
Right,
driveways?
that's all
covers
captured.
that?
Cleaning,
Riprap, all that.
cleaning of all that is captured by the DEP routine maintenance, I believe. Is that correct, Mark? You have a maintenance plan. It has to be, you're on a 5-year licensing.
All stormwater permits have to be
Recertified.
revisited and reissued and recertified every 5 years.
So there's a log of keeping maintenance and everything.
So you have to keep a log, and
You okay with it?
if you were to just make a condition that add a note to the plan, staff of fire will keep the parking lot free of trash and will be policed periodically.
That's perfect.
That would be fine with that.
Okay. You okay with that?
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? All right. That brings us to the end of the line here.
Yes, we would very much like that to happen.
Yes. Oh, no, we need to go back. She's
Within
correct.
this.
We need to go back and capture that last one on the shoreline zone, because now you have gone through the site plan criteria. Now you need to go back to that one on the shoreline zone.
Number 9.
It's G, I think, in the shoreline. 9, division 9.
To the conformance of the provisions of section 15 of the land use ordinance.
Shoreline zoning, page 10.
That's
But these are the,
section 15.
9 refers to 15,
Says 15.
shoreline zoning, which
Right.
is the GHJ
Right.
RST.
Flip phone.
So if you go to page 3 of my memo, it lists the sections of the shoreline zoning, section 15, which
Oh, wait, hold a second, I'm sorry. Page 8, they did go through.
Right, they did go through those, so I mean, do they have to, what do you do for Article 9 then, for Section 9, then you just,
Right, section 9, I don't know why that was on hold when you did, unless you were, so if you, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to guide you through this. If you go to page 8,
you already voted on,
you
so,
voted on the individual ones, and
Right.
G, parking areas failed.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you were waiting for more information and that was under reconsideration, but for some reason, 9 was on hold, that vote. And 9 relates to these section 15 standards.
yeah, I think the board's feeling was they wanted to go through the site plan criteria, because it's a dual application, but they
Right.
voted on 9, I think was.
We did not, no, we have not voted on 9.
Right,
But 9 relates back to your votes on page 8, because these
So-
G, H, J, R, S, and T are the applicable sections of section 15 of shoreline zoning, which is the number 9 criteria. If that's all.
Right, so unless parking areas is going to be approved, or the 9 is not approved. We can't, right, okay.
it's kind of redundant.
I know.
So Mary, is your suggestion now to go back and revisit the parking item G, or just to vote on 9, Article 9?
Well, I mean, maybe to refresh our recollections as to why,
All right,
What was item G, parking areas, was that
In the
the
shoreline
side,
zone.
in the shoreline zone, you can pull it out.
did that relate to the total size of the parking lot and the number of parking spaces?
I believe
We had
so.
that discussion about?
This is the section that talks about the parking area shall be adequately sized for the proposed use, what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and that's what your issue was, is that you didn't feel the parking lot was adequately sized based on the
The
need.
intended usage, right, right.
And at the time, you had asked for this additional information. And it was October, but I think that at the time you didn't go to number 9 because you were giving them the opportunity to maybe
Right. So-
change your vote
Right.
on G, based on new information with the study.
So the question is do you want to re-vote? You've had a vote on that once. Do you want to, there's someone who voted in the affirmative, correct?
Right.
Want to reopen that for a new vote, or do you want to stay with a 2-3 vote?
If it's the exact same line of thought of the motion that we reconsidered and I change my vote on, I mean, technically, we should revisit it. What do you think, Bob?
Well,
Or is it going to matter at all? Is it just a house cleaning thing?
well, to reopen the vote, we need one of those 2 votes to make the motion. One of the 2 votes that voted for it, to reopen the vote, just like we did last time.
And I voted for it?
No.
No,
Yeah,
I
sure
think-
they did.
Danielle's gonna
I think,
find out.
I think it was Greg and I.
yeah, I think it was, but I know it was definitely,
Greg and me.
I know one was definitely Greg.
Really, Mary,
Well, we got Greg.
all you're saying is that the votes don't line up between G and what we voted on tonight.
No, it does
No, I
line
think
up.
what I was saying was, you hadn't voted on, so we have 3 sets of standards that are floating around here. We have the shoreland zoning 9 ultimate criteria. The last one of those is that it meets the land use standards within the shoreland zone requirements that are applicable to parking areas. And those applicable sections are these G, H, J, R, S, and T. You had done straw votes on all of those sections, but never went back to the ultimate number 9 as to whether all of those are met as a whole. And my recollection is that you were giving them additional opportunity to present information about the proposed use and whether it was adequately sized, because they didn't do the survey of the residents and they didn't provide further information, which is what they've provided now. So the question is whether, with the new information they've provided, whether you think that vote needs to be revisited. If not, you can jump to 9 and determine whether these have been met.
My recollection was we felt we couldn't vote on that one until we voted on the safety issue. And that's why it was put on hold,
That may be.
because we hadn't voted on the safety aspect, therefore we couldn't vote on 9.
Well, there's a vote on all of these.
Right, we voted on all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You
had
did vote.
It was
Bob,
formally
I had
tabled.
Bob
Didn't-
and Greg.
Right, we tabled 9 because we couldn't vote on 9 because we turned down the parking area, and that's when we requested additional information.
Right.
So you're saying it would almost be impossible for us to vote that number 9 is in conformance?
Correct.
If
That's
we
correct.
have
If you keep with the-
denied G previously?
Exactly.
Right.
That
Okay,
is correct.
okay.
Yep.
All right. Now I understand.
Yeah, I know, it's
Okay.
big circle.
I thought you were lobbying for us to get our votes lined up between G 2
No,
months ago
no.
and tonight on...
No.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
All right, so I guess what we need is, I'll just, the motion is that the applicant is in conformance with the provisions of section 15 of the land use ordinance, land use standards, excuse me.
And again, those applicable standards and your votes are on page 8 of Jim's memo.
GHJR SMT. Is there a second to the motion?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. So what we're voting on now is that the applicant is in conformance with the provisions of section 15 of the land use ordinance. Our previous vote on item G makes this, the parking area, which was not approved, it makes then, by default, the application not being in conformance. So all those, any more discussion? Do we know what we're doing? All right, well, you okay?
Yeah.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay.
They have to be consistent.
Just to be clear, do we need one overall for the site plan, or because they have to itemized?
Well, this is sort of, now you've done all of your votes on all the standards, and you have a couple of options. One is to direct staff
I'm ready to go.
to draft a decision based on your deliberations that denies the project based on your votes, and will come back to you at your next meeting with written findings of fact, and you can amend those, adopt those, and make your final vote as to whether or not the application is approved or denied.
I think we're at that point. The applicant has clearly said he has no intention of redesigning, and our votes tonight show that we don't feel that his design is acceptable.
Right. But what I'm saying is I would recommend that you vote to direct staff to draft a decision.
So we need to make a
So you're
motion
not
and
sitting
second.
here for another 2 hours
Then you'll
going
vote
through
on that findings of fact,
fact.
as final denial, once the findings of fact come back.
All right, so since I've got it written down, the motion, I move that we direct staff to prepare a finding of fact for the denial of the application of the Park and Ride facility put forth by the Tri-Island in accordance with the board's deliberations this evening and at prior meetings. Specifically, we find jointly that the applicant failed to present evidence with respect to the safe and,
Yeah, that's a serious question.
thank you. No, is it- let me do it. Safe and healthful conditions, and for the proper sizing of the parking lot under item 9, section 15 of the land use standards.
Shoreline.
Shoreline standards, thank you.
Well, second.
Okay, so what we'll do is, we will vote on this, staff will prepare, we'll look through the hours and hours of the videotape. We'll put together the finding of fact,
Cook popcorn for.
and then at the next meeting, we will vote on that project. Okay?
Need a
Take a
second
vote.
on your motion?
Was there a second on the motion?
I second it.
Second. Any other discussion? Everybody know what we're doing? All right, all those in favor?
In favor,
Directing staff.
okay, I'm sorry, yes. I'm in favor of the applicant, no.
No one opposed? All right, so, Ann Kent abstains. Mark, you know, we're doing that finding of facts, so you'll come back again, because it wouldn't be a planning board. I wouldn't, you know. Excellent. I was concerned.
Gonna have his body double come to that one.
What do we got
All right,
next?
agenda.
So who is staff?
Before you go, hey, Mary?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I missed in my opening, because I didn't have my cheat sheet, in what was verbiage to read on the when the denial, the applicant's rights, and the project is denied.
Okay.
Do you know that verbiage so that you could let Mark know so that we have it on the record that he's been informed?
Well, you really haven't voted on a denial.
So we don't have to worry about it.
Right,
No.
no, next time.
Excellent.
Remember it next time.
I remember it next time.
You voted to tell us to write something that
Okay.
denies it, and then the next time.
I just didn't want to I wanted to just make sure that was covered.
Yeah.
You did a superb job there.
Oh, who's got it? Did I just see your agenda? I've lost my agenda.
I can't get this done again.
Oh, yeah, we got this final
There's
one.
something else on the agenda.
I haven't even looked at it. Yeah, I got 3 copies of it.
Yeah, I got 2 copies now.
Oh,
I looked at it a long time ago, but I don't.
I think I already have a copy of it.
maybe we can get
We can
that.
table it again.
Oh, that's right.
We can table it again.
Excuse me, excuse me, hello! The board, we're still in session.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, back a while ago, we had a discussion about taking a look at the board's bylaws and rules of conduct. Last time these were revisited in 2009. The only thing that I've added is on page 7. There was one bit of staff correspondence which you want me to add, so we added it to the bylaws, which is if the review authority is to make written approval for a staff level qualified review site plan, that correspondence be forwarded on to the board for their review.
Excellent.
So that's the underlined section under 5A on page 7, which I've added. Again, we haven't reviewed these, or you haven't reviewed these since 2009, so I didn't know if there was any other conducts or items that you wanted to renew or look at, but we probably should consider these and again, revise them. It's been 5 years, or not quite 5 years, 4.5.
So why don't we, I know we've had this on the agenda now for a while.
Yeah, it's just, I think now you can formally put it on there as, I don't know, do we need to formally put it on as a public hearing or for bylaws, or is that just something we can do?
No, I think that they can change it, but I think they do have to go to the selectmen to be
Okay.
Approved.
considered.
Give us his homework.
Yeah, let's do that as homework.
I haven't heard it for a while.
Right. And we'll,
That means teachers.
Danielle, just put it on the agenda for next time for a vote,
The only
for
other,
changes.
the other item that we were thinking about with that was how we're gonna do findings of fact.
Yeah, we need to do that.
We need to do that. And I did find through your document, the planning manual, that there was a case, there is a couple examples of how they've done it in other communities. It's long, drawn out. You have town's attorney here tonight to find out if there's a shorter version we can address, whether it be a checklist and just, or whether we've got to go through the painstaking process of reading it all into the record and then having.
Isn't like the lawyer the last one you want to ask?
Well, we're at that point.
The hunger sheet.
Well, I mean, the option is what you did, the other option is what you did tonight, which is you direct staff.
Right.
And how would that affect the applicant?
Well, unfortunately, we only meet once a month.
Right.
So,
And that's also why your vote tonight was not an up or down of the application, because that starts the clock ticking on the appeal process, and they only have 30 days to appeal, and if you only meet once a month, it kind of throws things off. So your vote was just to direct staff to draft something that denies it, and that the next time you'll adopt it, and that will be the denial, and it starts the appeal period.
But isn't that better for the applicant in that situation? He knows the issues,
Yes.
and so he has an extra 30 days.
Right,
Where
no,
it's
that's
not
better for the
approval.
applicant, but
Right.
what happens now if we vote in the affirmative?
Yeah.
We
then
don't
they have to
really,
wait
they're gonna have to wait
until
another
the
whole
next
cycle,
meeting to be approved.
right?
Yeah.
Which is not really fair.
Right, I think you can give yourself the two options, and some cases are going to be more straightforward, and you're gonna be able to just sit there and read your findings into the record and have it, you can read your findings into the record and then have it drafted afterwards and sent off to the applicant. That's not an issue.
So we can do it, you could write this so they can do it either way.
Either way, yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
And a long time ago, the planning used to have a checklist
Yep.
that we
Yes.
just went through.
Yeah.
At the end of the deliberations, he would just go, right before the final vote, he would just go through that.
Yes.
Actually, that was good. Go through that checklist. And it didn't take, I mean, it was a little painful, but it wasn't, it went pretty quickly if we just went, instead of reading out every item, he would just go item G, item H, and met. That would be sufficient, right?
Well, what you need to have in your written findings is not just the up or down, but the
Right.
basis for that decision. So what happened in this case is you talked about things almost a year ago.
Right.
That if you were to sit down tonight and go through your basis, you're not gonna remember. So, if you had one long meeting and you talked about everything that night, at the end of the night, you had your checklist.
Right.
And you went through it and you were able to read, your findings with regard to that one aspect, you would be able to do that in 1 or 2 days.
Well, it's nice
It
and
would be
succinct
fresh.
too.
But it's
because
sort of like
when-
how-
When we have questions about things that the board decided on in 2000 and the records aren't there anymore,
Right.
then what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, the way I've seen the example, it's sort of set up like how I've done my memo, item by item, with a little blurb of how it was met or things that needed to be added as conditional. So it's not a lot of work to draft something up on the side as a final document, final decision or whatever.
Have it ready to,
Have it ready to go, and then you can either, say A, B, C, D
Sure.
as written.
because you'll have a feel for which way the
Right,
project's
right.
going.
Yeah,
Some
I-
of it
and
is
I've
just
done-
cutting and pasting of
And
what
then,
you've written
exactly, and
before
like you
with
do now with
modifications.
conditions,
Yeah.
if something comes up, you'll have to write it in. What I'll do is I'll just fill it in the best I can, and then leave some blank lines if something has to be added.
Right, so what you can do in advance is lay out the facts as presented, this is the application, this is the proposal, and you have your document started, and then you have your list of all the standards and blanks underneath them to be determined and filled in.
A good example is gonna be King Pines, because they're on such a
Right.
short, they're not gonna wanna wait a
So
month.
would we want that checklist right into the bylaws? Or,
Well, that
No,
was,
because
No.
every case is gonna have a different checklist.
right, okay.
But
But
the
the
question-
procedure, we want it.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you would want your procedure.
Are you gonna write that, or who will write that and put it in?
I can,
Yeah, we can work on it.
we can work
together.
on that. Because that's one thing that's just kind of missing in the whole procedure, is and we haven't done it that way in the past. It's just been, you approve the standards, kind of, that's where it ends, and there's an approval letter that goes out, or some kind of, document from the planning office that goes out and says, yeah, this was the vote, you're good to go.
Yeah,
But now this is a little more formal, that you get to do a double check on the actual
Right.
decision.
makes sense.
Sort of like what we'll do with the, what you've got here for homework, with the
Yep.
staff, do the same thing.
One piece
Makes
of
sense?
other business. One piece of other business.
Yes.
There's something that dawned on me tonight. When we get plans in from applicants, 24 by 36 is about as small as they come. And we start having to try to unwrap these plans and lay them across the table, it's really an elephant. I'm wondering if we should think about requesting plans to the planning board for review at meetings be in scaled half-size sets. Be much easier to work with, it'd be a quarter of the size, and we could each open something up, it would be right there, and we could thumb through it without having to.
There's another component
have
of
a
that
mess.
as well, that I think staff and I would like to see, and that would be, at the end, the final documents submitted back in PDF form. So again, it's stored easier than, you still have a big document, but now you've got an electronic version. For Danielle, if the public wants to
Yep.
come in, it's a lot easier to give them the, PDF for
But
copies.
that's in our warrant, we have to change it, that's the
Yeah,
ordinance.
I was
We
gonna
have to
say,
change
because
that.
I thought that was
Yeah.
part of the, because, I have a whole check sheet
Yeah.
that I go by.
Well,
that
We just
was
did that,
handed
we
on
just
to
went
me.
through that in one
Right.
of the ordinances.
Yeah, it's
No, we
an
just,
ordinance.
I
one of the
didn't,
ordinances we were changing,
right.
we just missed it.
Right.
We need to rework that
And if
somehow.
we-
It's just too cumbersome trying to.
But that's something we can definitely put on for next year.
Well, I mean, you could still, in practice, ask for it.
Right.
Right,
You know, it
Right, yeah,
doesn't.
they're just doing what we asked for.
Right, if they say no, they're not required to, but I imagine that they could just print out a
Oh,
different
yeah,
size.
they all can, sure.
Well,
No big deal.
PDF would also help, because with what's going on with the Postal Service, it was okay this time, but there's been a couple times with the Postal Service where I've gotten the stuff the day of. Whereas if we had an electronic that we could get ahead of time, even if we're gonna get paper backup, at least I've had a chance to review it, and then, before I get here, but.
Right, and if you have a PDF, you can zoom in on things.
Right,
Right. And more communities are coming in line with that. When you submit, they're cutting down on the amount of paper.
yeah, I think it's a
Going
great
more
idea.
electronic. Yeah, no, that's years
Fry
worth.
Island.
Yeah.
No, this is,
All right.
this isn't all of it.
Yeah, I know,
Fry
I know,
Island.
it's right here.
I move we adjourn.
This was just like the
Second?
recent stuff.
All those in favor?